I don't know what to think. I don't know who to be, really, because I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't sort of thing. And I can't sort out what I want because it's hard to separate from what's expected of me.
But the thing is that all the different things that people expect from me, those are all parts of me. I just don't know which one to choose.
It's a constant balancing act. You can't look too willing or experienced. Like, you can't be more experienced than the guy is. And you can't come off looking like a slut, because then you'll look really bad.
My name is Lynn Phillips. I'm a social and developmental psychologist, and as part of my work, I've interviewed hundreds of girls and women from different racial and economic backgrounds about the joys and frustrations of their heterosexual relationships, from first kisses to hookups to long-term romances. And throughout this film, you'll see that very often the stories they share with me about relationships and hookups are filled with dilemmas about whether and when and why to have sex.
Not only was I scared about having sex with him, but I was also sort of scared about not doing
Their
it.
stories raise questions about what it means to give and experience pleasure.
I was never afraid of him. I was afraid of letting him down. For me, as much as for him.
And their stories force us to re-examine seemingly simple notions about consent and coercion.
I didn't exactly feel like I could say no. I hoped that he would see me crying and that he would just stop.
Where do you stop once you start? Because then you become this terrible tease or something if you don't continue on or continue to please them.
The message women get is go away a little closer. Essentially be both slutty and virginal, a good girl and a bad girl at the same time. We can see these very mixed messages playing out in popular women's and teens magazines, where on one page they're told to be hot and sexy and to seek pleasure and to be well versed in all kinds of sexual techniques and positions. And in the next breath, they're told to be childlike, to be baby soft and coy and play hard to get. With all these stories in mind, the way young women talk about sex in the real world starts to make a little more sense. They're told they have to find a way to be both sexual and not sexual at the same time, and to please men at all costs, even at great cost to their own well-being, while somehow maintaining and asserting their own power and independence. And at the same time, the culture offers virtually nothing to help women make sense of these dangerous contradictions. The result is that young women have been forced to make sense out of the nonsense of the culture. That's why we do well to listen to what young women are actually saying.
If a girl won't give a guy sex when he wants it, she's not taking care of his needs. But if she does it, then she's branded.
You have to be two people, the saint and the sinner. The librarian and the stripper.
Now, I'm not saying that I don't hear young women talking about enjoying sex and getting pleasure from sex. Of course I do, and that's great. But far too often I hear those same young women telling me a very different story.
No, I don't think that I would call it abuse or victimization or anything, because even though it might look that way with his hand over my mouth and his hurting me and all, I don't think that I could ever call myself a victim.
I hear so many young women talk about boyfriends who've treated them terribly, only to turn around in the next breath and say, but don't get me wrong, he's a great guy. He just has trouble with his temper sometimes.
He wasn't abusive. He was just acting out his frustrations from his own experience.
And maybe most disturbing of all, I've listened to one young woman after another blame herself when she's been sexually violated.
It was my own fault in a way. I was trying to be so grown up and just assert myself and get what I wanted. I should have known better.
Why would so many women who are pressured or hurt or coerced in their sexual encounters seem to blame themselves?
It's funny how you pick up on those messages early on. It's not like anyone has to directly teach them to you or anything, but you kind of just grow up hearing them, and whether you believe them in your conscious mind or not, they kind of stick.
So when people step into a hookup or a relationship, both parties are bringing those stories with them without even necessarily knowing it. So when a young woman finds herself compelled to put up with something or do something she doesn't want, it's not as though a man needs to hold a gun to her head in order to make her feel pressure to comply. The culture's already done that work for him.
But even though my head was telling me to just say no, I let him do it because at the time things were moving really fast and I couldn't think of a reason I could tell him no without looking without him and his friends making fun of me.
We need to be really clear here. It's not that women don't feel upset about what's happened to them. It's that we have this cultural notion of the perfect victim, and we talk about blame as though it's a zero-sum game. So if a woman has even 1% of responsibility, if she asserted her sexuality, tried to look hot, had too much to drink, or even just agreed to be alone with the guy, it's as though she's 100% at fault and he bears no responsibility for what he did. And if she doesn't fit that perfect victim mold, if it's at all complicated, which of course it always is, then there's just no language to explain what happened short of calling it a bad night or blaming herself.
The fact that he forced me, it happened within a whole lot of other things. So I don't think it's really fair to women who have actually been attacked to call me a victim of rape.
One of the most striking things I hear from young women I talk to is that they never shared their stories before because they didn't think anyone would understand.
It feels really good to be able to tell someone that.
I want to say to young women who hear echoes of your own experiences in these stories, you are not alone. And it's important that we come together to share our experiences, not just to get them off our chests, but to use them collectively to demand change.